Econ Thorne sat in his private study, staring at his phone screen where a notification from yet another payday loan app glowed. Final reminder. Immediate payment required. Amount due, $127,000. Days past due, 14. He looked at the screen, hissed a curse, and let out a heavy, ragged breath. That was the fourth notification in the last hour. His total debt had spiraled past $500,000, and that was not even counting the high-stakes bets he had placed the previous night, desperately hoping to break even. He had lost another $80,000. Kamari knew nothing. His wife, the highly successful owner of a boutique network of luxury assisted living facilities for the black elite, had no idea what kind of abyss he had fallen into over the last 6 months. Econ had become a master of the double life. He had a separate bank card for his gambling, a burner phone for dodging debt collectors, and a relentless stream of lies about business meetings and out-of-town conferences. Kamari trusted him without question, and he used that trust as a shield. But there was something else weighing on him even more heavily. Kalani. She was a 22-year-old girl with wide, soulful eyes and a childlike faith in his promises. They had met 3 months ago at a high-end shopping center where she worked in a designer boutique. Econ had wandered in by chance, looking for an anniversary gift for Kamari. Kalani had smiled at him with such openness and sincerity that he had completely lost his head. Within a week, they were meeting in secret, and 2 weeks after that, she confessed she was in love. Econ promised her the world, a penthouse downtown, her own business. She dreamed of an Afro-chic cafe with vintage decor and, of course, a life together. "As soon as I handle things with my wife," he would say, pulling her close. Kalani believed every word. She didn't know that Kamari was the one with the money, the thriving business, and the massive investment portfolio. She didn't know that Econ had married Kamari 7 years ago, specifically for that. For the wealth, the status, and the ability to live a life of leisure. He had targeted her 7 years ago when he was broke after his own tech startup had crashed and burned. Kamari had taken him as he was, helped him get back on his feet, and given him everything. He had repaid her with betrayal. But now, betrayal wasn't enough. Econ needed money, and he needed it fast. The collectors had started calling his office number, which they had somehow tracked down. It was only a matter of time before Kamari found out. And divorce? Divorce meant ruin. According to the ironclad prenuptial agreement her lawyers had insisted on before the wedding, Econ would get nothing. Absolutely nothing. The entire business, the real estate, the accounts, everything was held in Kamari's name from before the marriage. She wasn't going to share, and Econ had known that from the start. But he also knew something else. 2 weeks ago, while going through documents in their home safe, he had stumbled upon Kamari's will. She had drafted it a year ago after her mother passed away, likely reflecting on her own mortality. Econ had read it in secret while she was at work. He had frozen in shock. The sole heir to her entire estate in the event of her death was him, Econ Thorne. No other relatives, no charities, just him. The idea had come to him then, cold and dark like a midnight wind. If Kamari died, he would get it all. The debts would vanish in a single day. Kalani would get her penthouse and her cafe. He would be free. A new life without the past, without the mistakes, without the fear of being exposed. Econ spent a week researching. The internet is full of information if you know where to look. He read about toxins, about symptoms, about how different substances affected the body. He needed something fast, but not instant, something that could be written off as a heart attack or anaphylactic shock. Eventually, he settled on a compound he managed to acquire through a shady contact under the guise of pest control for a rural property. Colorless, nearly tasteless, and soluble in liquid. It would take effect within an hour, causing a gradual decline that looked like a severe allergy or acute food poisoning. Tonight, he had made his move. Akon had invited Kamari to a prestigious restaurant on the waterfront, her favorite spot where they celebrated their milestones. She was thrilled by the invitation. In recent months, they had rarely seen each other, both consumed by work. Kamari wore an elegant silk dress the color of a ripe plum, her hair styled in an intricate crown of braids, and she smiled at him the way she used to in the very beginning. "You look breathtaking," Akon said, helping her into the car. "Thank you, baby." Kamari touched his hand. "I'm just glad we finally found time for us." The restaurant was the height of luxury. Hand-blown glass chandeliers cast soft light over ivory marble floors, and massive gilded columns supported high ceilings adorned with modern black art. The tables were draped in crisp white linen, sparkling with genuine silver cutlery. In the center of each table sat arrangements of fresh orchids in crystal vases. Smooth jazz flowed from hidden speakers, creating an atmosphere of intimacy and sophistication. A waiter in a flawless black suit brought them a starter of jumbo tiger prawns, garnished with edible flower petals and drizzled with cold-pressed truffle oil. The prawns were large, almost translucent, with a delicate texture. Then came the main course, Wagyu beef fillet, seared to a perfect medium, served with a wild mushroom and red wine reduction that literally melted in the mouth, leaving a hint of nuttiness and smoke. Beside it sat a whole roasted branzino, seasoned with rosemary and thin lemon slices, on a bed of grilled vegetables, zucchini, eggplant, and sweet peppers. To accompany the meal, the sommelier suggested a bold French red from the 2015 vintage, a Bordeaux with a rich bouquet of blackcurrant and vanilla. Every detail of the service, every movement of the staff, spoke of a place where a dinner for two cost as much as a monthly salary for an average person. Akon had chosen this place for a reason. Here, Kamari felt relaxed, happy, and unsuspecting. Akon tried to act natural, joking, talking about work, and asking about her day. Kamari spoke about the new facility she planned to open in the suburbs, and how difficult it was to find qualified staff. She was engrossed in the conversation, and Akon waited for his moment. When Kamari excused herself to the powder room, he quickly pulled a small glass vial from his inner jacket pocket. His adrenaline was spiking, but he didn't back down. He glanced around. The waiters were busy with other tables. Akon emptied the contents of the vial into Kamari's glass of red wine, gave it a slight swirl to mix the liquid, and slipped the empty container back into his pocket. He simply waited for his wife to return, forcing himself to stay calm. Kamari returned a minute later, sat down, and raised her glass. "To us, Akon. To always being together." Akon clinked his glass against hers, careful not to meet her eyes. "To us." She took several sips. Akon watched as she set the glass down and continued talking about her plans. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Kamari finished her wine and the rest of her meal. Akon had begun to wonder if the substance would work at all when he noticed her face turning slightly pale. "Kamari, are you okay?" he asked, faking concern. "I don't know," she said, rubbing her forehead. "I feel a bit dizzy. Maybe the wine was too strong." "Maybe we should get some fresh air?" They settled the bill. Akon used Kamari's card, and he helped her into her coat. She held onto his arm tighter than usual, and he could feel her fingers turning cold. As they stepped outside, Kamari suddenly stopped and clutched her stomach. "I feel sick," she whispered. "Really sick." "Hang in there, honey." Akon put his arm around her, guiding her to the car. "I'll get you to the hospital right now. Everything will be fine." He helped her into the passenger seat and buckled her in. Kamari leaned back, her breathing fast and shallow. Beads of sweat broke out on her forehead. Akon started the engine and pulled out onto the road, ostensibly heading toward the nearest ER, but 10 minutes later he turned off the main highway onto a gravel road leading into a dense wooded area outside the city limits. "Akon, where are we going? This isn't the way to the hospital." Her voice was weak, barely a whisper. "I know," he replied coldly. Akon stopped the car deep in the woods, where the trees closed in over the road like a dark tunnel. He turned off the headlights and looked at his wife. Kamari stared at him with wide eyes, filled with pain and confusion. "I put poison in your wine," Ekon said, a thin smile touching his lips. "You have maybe 30 minutes left, maybe less. Get out of the car." "What?" Kamari tried to reach for him, but her hands wouldn't obey. You're joking, Ekon? This isn't funny." "I'm not joking." He unbuckled her seatbelt, got out, and opened her door. "Get out! Now!" "But why?" Tears tracked down her cheeks. "I love you. I gave you everything." "That's exactly why." Ekon grabbed her arm and roughly pulled her out of the car. Kamari collapsed onto her knees on the damp earth, gasping for air. "You gave me everything except the right to control it. Your prenups, your lawyers, your constant control. I'm tired of being an accessory to your successful life." He stood over her, looking down with the contempt he had hidden so carefully for so long. "For 7 years I endured it. 7 years of listening to you talk about your successes, your projects, how great you are. And what was I? The husband of a successful businesswoman. An addition. A piece of jewelry at your corporate events. Meet my Ekon, you'd say, like you were introducing a pet." Kamari tried to speak, but he cut her off. "You think I didn't know your friends were laughing behind my back? That they called me a gold digger, a trophy husband? I heard it all, Kamari. Every word, every mocking look, and you did nothing to stop it because you didn't care about my dignity. All that mattered was that your business thrived, right?" He crouched down, looking her in the eye. "And you know what the funniest part is? I never loved you. Not for a single day. You were just a convenient option. A wealthy, lonely woman who fell for pretty words. I thought eventually I'd get access to the money, but you were smarter than that. Or your lawyer was. That damn prenup? You always tried to control me, but I found the loophole. The will. You signed your own death warrant, honey." Ekon stood up and brushed off his slacks. "Kalani is young, beautiful, and most importantly, she looks at me with adoration. She doesn't try to control me or set rules. With your money, we'll finally live for real. And you're just a mistake that needs to be corrected." He nudged her with his foot, and Kamari fell back onto the ground. "Stay here and think about how you lived your life wrong. You have 30 minutes, maybe less. Goodbye, Kamari. I can't say it was a pleasure." He slammed the door. Kamari tried to stand, but her legs gave out. She slumped onto the grass by the roadside, clutching her chest. The pain was becoming unbearable. "Ekon, please!" Her voice was nothing but a rasp. "Don't leave me here. I'll die." "That's the plan, sweetheart." He started the engine. "Goodbye." Ekon turned the car around and drove away without looking back. In the rearview mirror, he caught a glimpse of Kamari's figure hunched over on the shoulder. Then the trees hid her from view. He turned up the music to drown out the voice of his conscience, which was still trying to break through his cold resolve. 15 minutes later, Ekon was driving through the city streets, heading home. His phone vibrated, a message from Kalani. "When can I see you? I miss you." He smiled and typed back. "It'll all be settled soon. We're starting our new life, I promise." Kalani sent back a heart emoji. She didn't understand what was happening, but she was happy, naively believing in his words. Ekon imagined how in a few days he would report his wife missing, how he would play the grieving widower when they found her, how he would inherit everything and finally pay off his debts. Kalani would get her penthouse, her cafe. They would be together, and no one would ever know the truth. Kamari would just be a memory of the past, a problem he had finally solved. Ekon parked the car at the house, went up to the apartment, and poured himself a glass of bourbon. His hands were no longer shaking. His conscience was silent. He had done what he had to do. Now, he just had to wait. He pulled out his phone and sent Kalani another message. "Get ready for big changes, my love. Very soon you'll have everything you ever dreamed of." The girl replied almost instantly. "Are you serious? I'm so happy. I love you." Ekon chuckled. She believed the fairy tale he had spun for her. She believed he was an honest man stuck in an unhappy marriage. She believed his wife didn't understand him or value him. Kalani didn't ask too many questions, content with promises and occasional meetings in a rented apartment on the edge of the city. Her mother, Sandra, was more skeptical of Akon. Several times she had tried to talk to her daughter, hinting that a married man was unlikely to leave his family and that promises were just words. But Kalani brushed off the warnings, saying her mom didn't understand, that Akon was special, that he really loved her. Sandra would just sigh and fall silent, knowing her daughter was blinded by her feelings. Akon finished his bourbon and looked at his watch. 40 minutes had passed since he left Kamari in the woods. If the compound worked the way it was supposed to, she was already dead or close to it. In any case, help wouldn't arrive in time. The distance to the main road was too great. She was lying in the woods, likely unconscious. And that road was deserted, especially late at night. No one drove past. By the time someone found her, it would be too late. He lay down on the sofa, closed his eyes, and tried to relax. The plan had worked. Now he just had to wait for morning and then put on the performance. Call the police, report his wife missing, tell them she felt sick after dinner. He was driving her to the hospital, but she asked him to stop by the side of the road, got out to get some air, and disappeared into the brush. He searched for her, called for her, but couldn't find her. Akon replayed the story in his head several times, sharpening the details. Everything had to look believable. Tomorrow, a new life would begin. A life without debt, without fear, without Kamari. A life where he was finally the master of his own fate. Kamari lay on the damp grass by the side of the gravel road, feeling life slowly draining from her body. The pain in her abdomen was excruciating. Every breath was a struggle. Her arms and legs wouldn't move. She tried to call for help, but her voice was a faint croak that was immediately swallowed by the silence of the night. Tears flowed down her cheeks, mixing with the dirt on her face. Akon, her husband, the man she had trusted for 7 years, the man she had loved despite all his flaws. He had poisoned her in cold blood, calculatedly, with a smile on his lips, and thrown her away in the woods like a piece of trash. Kamari closed her eyes, trying to gather what was left of her strength. She didn't want to die, not here, not like this, but her body refused to cooperate. She tried to sit up, pushing off the ground with her hands, but she immediately collapsed back down. Her breathing was becoming shallower. Her thoughts were muddled. A deep chill was taking over her body. She resigned herself, closed her eyes, and prepared for the end. But suddenly, through the veil of pain and numbness, she heard the sound of an approaching vehicle. The engine hummed smoothly and quietly, clearly a high-end car. How had a car ended up on this back road? Kamari used the last of her strength to lift her hand, trying to attract attention. Her hand shook, barely rising above the ground, but she tried with everything she had. A black SUV slowed down, drove a few more yards, and stopped. Kamari heard a door slam, then quick footsteps approaching her. A man's voice, startled and sharp, rang out. "Lord, what happened here? Ma'am, are you alive?" Kamari tried to answer, but could only manage a groan. She opened her eyes and saw the face of a man in his early 40s leaning over her. The features were familiar, very familiar. She tried to focus her gaze and suddenly recognized him. Kenji Sterling, her business rival, owner of a network of private clinics and medical centers. For the past 2 years, he had been trying to enter the assisted living market. They had met at professional conferences, discussed potential collaborations a few times, but nothing had ever materialized. Kamari had always considered him a man of integrity, even if he was a tough competitor. "Kamari?" Kenji recognized her and knelt beside her. "Kamari Thorne, what's going on? What happened?" "Poisoned," was all she could force out. She tried to speak again, but only a rasp came from her throat. Kenji gently supported her head, listened to her breathing, and checked her pulse. His face grew grim. "You need emergency medical help. I'm taking you to the clinic right now." He lifted her in his arms. Kamari felt light, almost weightless in his embrace as he carried her quickly to the car. He sat her in the back, covered her with his blazer, buckled the belt, then got behind the wheel and sped off. "Hold on, Kamari. We'll be at my clinic in 20 minutes. They'll help you there." Kamari nodded, though the movement triggered a new wave of pain. She closed her eyes, trying to focus on breathing. Every breath was a small victory. Kenji drove fast but carefully, slowing down on turns to avoid causing her more pain. "Who did this to you?" he asked, not taking his eyes off the road. "Do you remember?" Kamari opened her eyes and whispered one word. "Husband." Kenji's jaw tightened as he looked back at the road. "Understood. Don't say anything else. Right now, we just need to save your life." He pulled out his phone, dialed a number, and put it on speaker. "Ma, it's me. I need your help immediately. I'm coming to the clinic. Poisoning. The patient is in critical condition. Get everything ready for toxicology and anti-venom therapy. I'll be there in 15 minutes. "Understood, son," a calm female voice replied. "I'm waiting." Aurelia Sterling, Kenji's mother. Kamari had heard of her, a renowned toxicologist who had worked in medicine for over 40 years. If anyone could help her, it was Aurelia. The SUV flew through the night city, blowing through yellow lights, overtaking the few cars on the road. Kenji glanced in the rearview mirror periodically, checking on Kamari. She was holding on, though her strength was fading by the minute. Finally, they pulled up to a modern, low-rise building with a sign that read Sterling Medical Center. Kenji jumped out, flung open the back door, and lifted Kamari in his arms again. At the entrance, a woman in a white lab coat was already waiting, silver-haired, with sharp eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses. Aurelia Sterling. "Into toxicology," she said briefly. "Langston is already prepping the IVs." They went down the hall into a small treatment room equipped with a gurney, medical monitors, and a tray of instruments. A tall man in a lab coat, Dr. Langston Pierce, the clinic director, was setting up the IV system. Kenji gently laid Kamari on the gurney. Aurelia immediately went to work, checking blood pressure, temperature, pupils, and listening to her heart and lungs. "Classic signs of neurotoxin poisoning," she said. "We need an immediate blood panel and gastric lavage. Kenji, help me." The next half hour was a blur of nightmare for Kamari. She drifted in and out of consciousness. She felt the needle prick her arm, the cool rush of medicine through her veins, and the agonizing nausea of the stomach pump. Aurelia worked with precision, barking orders to Langston and Kenji. No one asked unnecessary questions. Everyone understood that every second counted. An hour later, Aurelia stood up and stripped off her gloves. "The worst is over. The antidote is taking effect." The blood work showed a thiophosphate compound. It's a toxin used in industrial agriculture for pest control, a lethal dose. If you had brought her 10 minutes later, there would have been nothing we could do. Kenji exhaled and rubbed his face. "She'll be okay?" "Yes, but she'll need time to recover. At least a week of intensive therapy and total isolation. No visitors, no calls, especially from her husband. He can't know she's here." Kenji looked at Kamari, who lay with her eyes closed, hooked up to the monitors. "I'll handle that." Dr. Pierce nodded. "We won't enter her into the patient database. Officially, she isn't here. I'll take full responsibility." Aurelia sat beside Kamari and took her hand. "Can you hear me, baby? You're safe. We saved you. Now you just need to rest and regain your strength." Kamari weakly squeezed her fingers in response. Tears flowed again, but this time they were tears of relief, not fear. Kenji walked into the hallway, pulled out his phone, and called his assistant. "Igor, I need information. Econ Thorne, Kamari Thorne's husband. Everything you can find, financial status, connections, movements over the last week. Dig deep and stay quiet. No one can know we're looking into this man." "Copy that, boss. How much time do I have?" "By tomorrow evening. It's urgent." Kenji hung up and went back into the room. Kamari was sleeping. Her breathing was steady, though her face was still pale. "She's strong," Aurelia said softly. "She'll make it. Ma, I'm going to take her to my house once she can move. I have the guest suite. She'll be safe there." "Good. but not for at least 3 days. She needs constant monitoring. Kenji nodded. He looked at the sleeping Kamari and wondered what kind of monster could do this to his own wife. He knew Kamari as a brilliant, honorable businesswoman who had built her empire from the ground up. They were competitors, but they had always respected each other, and now she had almost died at the hands of the man she trusted most. And Ikon? He's probably sitting at home right now celebrating his victory, thinking everything went smooth, that his wife is dead, and he'll soon have the inheritance. This bastard made a mistake, Kenji whispered. We're going to bring him down. I promise. Meanwhile, Ikon was indeed sitting at home, finishing his second glass of bourbon. His phone vibrated. Another message from Kalani. Can't wait for us to be together. You're my hero. He chuckled and wrote back, just a little longer, beautiful. Very soon, everything changes. Get ready for our new life. Kalani sent a flurry of hearts and kisses. Ekon lay back on the sofa and closed his eyes. The plan had worked perfectly. No witnesses, no evidence. The compound would dissipate in the body without a trace, if anyone even thought to look. They'd likely assume a heart attack or a severe allergic reaction. In a couple of days, he would find his wife's body in the woods, play the grieving husband, receive condolences, and then get his long-awaited freedom and money. He had no idea that Kamari was alive, that she was in safe hands, and that he would soon have to answer for everything he had done. Kamari opened her eyes and didn't immediately realize where she was. A white ceiling, the smell of antiseptic, the steady beep of medical equipment. She tried to move and felt the pull of the IV in her arm. Memory rushed back with a sharp, painful blow. The restaurant, Icon, the poison, the woods, the black SUV. Don't move too quickly, a calm voice said. Aurelia Sterling was sitting in a chair by the window with a medical chart in her hands. You're still weak. It's been 2 days since the poisoning. 2 days? Kamari struggled to prop herself up on her elbows. I'm alive. Alive, and you're going to stay that way. The toxin is out of your system, but your body needs time to recover. The door opened, and Kenji walked in with a tray, a cup of tea and a bowl of light soup. Good morning, he said, setting the tray on the bedside table. How are you feeling? Like someone tried to kill me. Kamari tried to smile, but her lips trembled. Thank you. If it wasn't for you... Don't. Kenji sat in the chair next to the bed. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, but now we need to talk. Are you ready? Kamari nodded. Aurelia helped her sit up more comfortably, propping pillows behind her back. Tell us everything from the beginning, Kenji asked. I need to understand what happened. Kamari took a deep breath and began to tell the story. How Ikon invited her to dinner, how she felt sick, how he supposedly took her to the hospital but turned into the woods instead, how he confessed to poisoning her and dumped her out of the car to die. Her voice shook and tears fell, but she told it all. He said he was tired of being an accessory to my life, she finished. That I gave him everything except the right to control it. I didn't realize he hated me that much. Kenji listened in silence, his expression growing darker. When Kamari went quiet, he pulled out his phone and showed her a photo of a young woman with dark hair and large eyes. Do you know this woman? Kamari stared at the screen and shook her head. Never seen her. Who is she? Kalani. 22 years old. Works in a boutique at the mall. And according to the info my guy found, she's been your husband's mistress for the last 3 months. Kamari froze. A mistress? Of course. It all made sense. Ikon didn't just want to get rid of her. He wanted to start over with someone else. Someone young, naive. Someone who wouldn't monitor his every move. I have their messages, Kenji continued. My guy got into his cloud storage. Ikon promised Kalani a penthouse, her own business, a cafe specifically, and a life together as soon as he settled things with his wife. In the last message he sent last night, he wrote, It'll all be settled soon. We're starting our new life. Kamari covered her face with her hands. The pain of the betrayal was almost physical, sharper than the pain of the poison. "There's more." Kenji pulled a folder from his bag. "Econ is drowning in debt. Payday loans totaling $520,000, sports betting. Collectors are calling him 10 times a day. He's bankrupt, Kamari, and the only way out of that hole for him was to inherit your estate." "The will," Kamari whispered. "I wrote it a year ago. Econ is the sole heir. Lord, I signed my own death warrant." "No," Kenji said firmly. "You trusted the man you married. That's normal. He turned out to be a monster, but we have a chance to hold him accountable, if you're ready." Kamari lifted her head and looked him in the eye. "I'm ready. What do we do?" "First, cut all ties. Divorce, immediately. Second, talk to an investigator. I have a friend at the district attorney's office, Detective Amara Vance. She specializes in cases like this. She's honest and principled. We can trust her, but if we go to the police, Econ will know I'm alive." Kamari frowned. "He might run." "That's why we'll act carefully and in stages. First, we gather all the evidence, and then we strike, suddenly and precisely, so he doesn't have time to react." Aurelia stepped toward them. "I've saved all of Kamari's blood samples. The presence of the thiophosphate compound is documented. That is irrefutable proof. Plus, my testimony as a toxicologist with 40 years of experience." "Perfect." Kenji made notes in a legal pad. "Next, we need the security footage from the restaurant. There's a chance it caught the moment Econ spiked your glass." "He did it when I went to the restroom," Kamari remembered. "I was gone for maybe 3 minutes. When I came back, he looked tense, but I didn't think anything of it." "Then there's a good chance the cameras caught it. I'll have Amara request the footage officially." Kenji dialed a number and put it on speaker. After 3 rings, a woman's voice answered. "Vance?" "Amara, it's Kenji Sterling. I need your help, urgently." "I'm listening." Kenji briefly laid out the situation. Detective Vance listened in silence, asking only a few clarifying questions. When he finished, she exhaled. "That's attempted murder. If everything you're saying holds up, he's looking at 15 to 25 years. I need to meet the victim, get her statement, and secure the medical records. When can she talk?" "Right now." Kamari sat up straighter in the bed. "I'm ready." "Good. I'll be there in an hour. Kenji, have everything ready, and not a word to anyone. This stays strictly confidential until we move for the arrest." "Copy that." An hour later, a woman in her 40s with short hair and a serious face entered the room. Detective Amara Vance introduced herself, showed her badge, and pulled out a recorder. "Kamari Thorne, I am a detective with the district attorney's office. Are you prepared to give a statement regarding the attempt on your life?" "I am," Kamari said firmly. For the next 2 hours, she told the entire story in detail. Amara recorded it, asked questions, clarified details, then reviewed the medical documents Aurelia provided, and made copies of the labs. "The picture is compelling," she said, tucking the papers into her folder. "Now I need to get the restaurant footage, pull Econ's financial records, and get a warrant for his phone and cloud storage. That will take a few days." "What about Kalani?" Kenji asked. "She could be an accomplice." "Possibly. But from the messages you showed me, it doesn't look like she knew Econ's plan. Most likely he played her. But I have to interview her. I'll do it through her family. It's safer that way. Sandra, her mother." Kenji flipped through his notes. 44 years old, works as an accountant for a construction firm, lives with her daughter in a 2-bedroom on the outskirts. I'll talk to her tomorrow. Vance stood up. "Kamari, you need to stay here and stay off the grid. No calls, no messages. Econ needs to think you're dead. That gives us the time we need to build the case." "What about the divorce?" Kamari asked. "We'll file through a representative. Econ will get the notice only after we have the full package of evidence. It'll throw him off balance, and he might make a mistake." Kamari nodded. The plan was clear. Now all that was left was to wait and hope everything worked. 3 days later, Kamari was able to stand and walk. Kenji took her from the clinic to his home, a spacious penthouse downtown with a minimalist interior. He led her to the guest suite. "Make yourself at home. You're safe here. My mother will come by every day to check on you, and I'll try to stay out of your way." "Kenji!" Kamari stopped him at the door. "Why are you doing all this? We're competitors. You could have just dropped me at a hospital and forgotten about it." He turned to her. "Because I can't walk away when someone needs help. Yes, we're business rivals, but that doesn't mean I'm heartless. Besides," he hesitated, "I've always respected you. For your integrity, your professionalism, and it hurts me to see what you've been through." Kamari felt tears welling up. "Thank you. I'll never forget this." Kenji nodded and left, quietly closing the door. Kamari was alone. She walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, in their apartment, her husband was living his life, believing he had gotten rid of her forever. But he was wrong. Soon he would realize what a monstrous mistake he had made. Meanwhile, Detective Imara Vance met with Sandra at a small cafe. The woman was anxious, not understanding why an investigator needed to see her. "Are you with the police?" she asked, sitting across from the detective. "What happened? Is my Kalani in trouble?" "I'm with the DA's office." "Your daughter isn't in trouble," Imara replied calmly, showing her badge. "But she might be a witness in a criminal case. I need to ask you some questions about Econ Thorne." Sandra turned pale. "I knew there was something wrong with that man. I told Kalani, but she wouldn't listen. Fell in love like a fool. He's promising her the world, but he's married. I've checked what he's promising. A penthouse, a business. He says he's getting a divorce and they'll be together. Kalani believes him, but I see he's lying. Men like that always lie." Imara pulled out a photo of Kamari. "Do you know this woman?" Sandra shook her head. "Never seen her." "This is Ikon's wife. 3 days ago he tried to kill her, poisoned her and left her to die in the woods." Sandra pressed her hand to her mouth. Her eyes widened with horror. "Lord, and what about her?" "She's alive. She was saved. Right now, we're gathering evidence to prosecute Econ. Your daughter can help the investigation. I need her messages with Econ, her testimony on what he promised her." "She didn't know," Sandra said quickly. "Kalani didn't know he was going to kill his wife. She's just a girl in love who believed the fairy tales." "I understand. And if she gives a voluntary statement, that will be taken into account. She's not an accomplice. She's a victim of his manipulation. But her testimony will help establish the motive." Sandra thought for a moment, then nodded. "Fine. I'll talk to her. She needs to know the truth. She'll testify." Kalani sat in the kitchen, staring at her mother with terrified eyes. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. Sandra had just told her everything she'd learned from Detective Vance, about Econ's attempt to kill his wife, about how everything he'd promised Kalani was built on blood and lies. "No," the girl whispered. "That can't be. Econ wouldn't do that. He loves me. He promised." "He promised you a penthouse and a business bought with blood money he'd get after his wife died," Sandra said harshly. "Do you understand what that means? He used you. You were his motive, his reason to kill another person." Kalani burst into tears, burying her face in her hands. Sandra hugged her daughter, pulling her close. "I'm a fool," Kalani sobbed. "I'm such a fool. How could I believe him?" "You're not a fool. You just fell for a monster who knows how to lie beautifully. But now you have a chance to make it right. The investigator needs your help. Your testimony will put him in prison." "But I didn't know." Kalani lifted her tear-stained face. "Mama, I swear, I didn't know he was going to kill her. If I had known, I never—" "I believe you. The investigator will too. That's why she wants you to give a voluntary statement. Show her the messages. Tell her what he promised. It'll prove he had a motive." Kalani wiped her tears and nodded. "Okay, I'll do it. I have to. That woman, his wife, she almost died because of me." "Not because of you," Sandra corrected. "Because of him. Because of his greed and malice. You have nothing to do with it." The next day, Kalani met with Imara Vance at the DA's office. The girl was terrified, her whole body trembling as she handed over her phone. Imara carefully reviewed the messages. Ikon had written to Kalani almost every day. He promised her the penthouse, the cafe, a future together. In one message, sent 2 days before the attempt on Kamari, he wrote, "Soon I'll handle everything with the wife. Divorce won't solve it. I'd end up with nothing. I have to settle it another way. But don't worry, baby. I've thought of everything." "What did he mean by settle it another way?" Imara asked. Kalani shook her head. "I don't know. I thought he was just going to find a way to divorce without losing the property. Maybe through a good lawyer or something. I never thought he was capable of murder." "And after that night, when it happened, did he write to you?" "Yes. The next day he wrote, 'It'll all be settled soon. We're starting our new life, I promise.' I was so happy. I thought he'd finally gotten the divorce papers." Imara took screenshots of the entire thread and printed the most critical messages. "Kalani, you've been a huge help. These messages prove Ikon had a clear motive. Now I need you to give a formal statement." "I will. I'll tell you everything I know." For the next 2 hours, Kalani detailed her relationship with Ikon, how they met, what he promised, how often they saw each other, and the fact that he never once mentioned his wife owned a multi-million-dollar business. Imara recorded every word. When the interview finished, Kalani looked exhausted, but there was relief in her eyes. "What happens to me now?" she asked quietly. "Will I go to jail?" "No," Imara replied confidently. "You didn't commit a crime. You were misled. But you need to cut off all contact with Ikon Thorne. No calls, no messages. If he tries to reach you, tell me immediately." Kalani nodded. "I don't ever want to see him again. Never." Meanwhile, Imara got the security footage from the restaurant. A tech expert ran the tape, stopping on the key moments. "There," he pointed to the screen. 21:43. The woman gets up and leaves, presumably to the restroom. On the screen, Kamari was seen getting up and heading for the exit. Ikon was left alone. The camera caught him in profile. He glanced around, checking if anyone was looking. Then, in a quick motion, he pulled a small vial from his jacket, emptied it into Kamari's glass, and tucked it back. The whole thing took less than 10 seconds. "Perfect." Imara stopped the recording. "That's direct evidence. I need high-res copies of this." "You got it." The expert nodded. Imara also pulled Ikon's financial records. The picture was grim. Debts to 5 different high-interest lenders totaling $520,000. Overdue payments, constant calls from collectors. His betting history showed he'd lost over $1 million in the last 6 months. Then she reviewed Kamari's will. According to the document, Ikon Thorne was the sole heir to her entire estate. The motive was undeniable. Massive debt, a mistress who wanted a lifestyle he couldn't afford, and a will that gave him everything if his wife died. "The case is perfect," Imara told her colleague as she laid out the papers. "We have the medical report of the poisoning, the video of him spiking the glass, the messages to the mistress promising a new life after the solution, the financial records showing he was broke, and the will. This is more than enough for an arrest warrant." "When do we move?" the colleague asked. "Soon, but first, we lure him in. Let him come to us thinking he's won." Imara called Kamari at Kenji's place. "Kamari, we're ready. Here's the plan. First, he gets a call from the police department. They'll tell him a body was found in the woods, identified by the ID in the purse as you. They'll invite him for an official identification in 3 days. That'll put him at ease. He'll think everything went to plan. Then, the following day, he'll get a call from the bank regarding the estate. That's when we take him." "How will it happen?" Kamari asked. Her voice was steady, but Kenji, sitting beside her, saw her knuckles turning white. "We'll summon him to the bank under the guise of an estate consultation. He'll walk in confident he's about to get your entire life, and we'll be waiting, you, me, Kenji, and the DA's task force. You'll personally hand him the divorce papers, and I'll officially charge him." "I want to see his face," Kamari said softly, "when he realizes I'm alive. You will, I promise." The next morning, Econ got a call from an unknown number, a man's voice, official and dry. "Econ Thorne?" "Yes, this is he," Econ said, tensing up. "Detective Miller, Central Precinct. Last night, a woman's body was found in a wooded area outside the city. Identification found in the purse belongs to Kamari Thorne. Is that your wife?" Akon froze. His heart dropped, then started racing. He swallowed before answering. "Yes, that's my wife. Lord, I've been looking for her for 3 days. She disappeared after dinner at a restaurant. She felt sick. I was trying to get her to a hospital, but she asked me to stop, got out for air, and didn't come back. I called, I searched." "I understand. Our condolences for your loss. We'll need you to come in for official identification. Can you be here Friday at 11 a.m.? "Yes, of course I'll be there, but what happened? How did she—" "Preliminary cause of death will be determined after the autopsy. We'll discuss the details when you arrive." Econ hung up and sank onto the sofa. A wave of relief washed over him. It worked. They found her. The police didn't suspect a thing. They thought it was a tragic accident. A couple more days, the ID, the funeral, and he'd have the money. Everything was going perfectly. He immediately texted Kalani. "Baby, tragedy has struck. Kamari is gone. They found her body. I'm devastated, but I know now we can finally be together. Just a little longer." Kalani replied a minute later. "How awful. I'm so sorry. Stay strong." "Thank you, love. I have to handle the formalities. Soon we'll be together. I promise." The next day, Thursday, Econ got another call. This time it was a woman's voice, professional and polite. "Econ Thorne?" "Yes." "Capital Bank, Private Wealth Management. We've been notified of the passing of your wife, Kamari Thorne. Please accept our deepest condolences. We hold her will on file, and according to the document, you are the sole heir to her estate. Could you come in today at 3 p.m. for a preliminary consultation?" Econ felt his heart soar. This was it, the inheritance. Everything was his. "Yes, of course. I'll be there. Which office?" "Conference room 7, 3rd floor. We'll be waiting." Econ hung up and laughed out loud. Finally. The debts would be gone. Kalani would get her penthouse and her cafe. The new life was starting right now. He showered, put on his best suit, shaved, and looked at himself in the mirror. His face looked a bit haggard, but he could play that off as grief. He rehearsed a mournful expression, took a few deep sighs. He had to look convincing. At 2:45, he walked into the bank. Marble floors, high ceilings, security at the entrance. A prestigious place. He took the elevator to the 3rd floor, found room 7, adjusted his tie, took a deep breath, and knocked. "Come in," a woman's voice called. Econ opened the door, stepped inside, and stopped dead. Sitting at the long mahogany table was Kamari. Alive, pale, thinner, but absolutely alive. Her eyes were fixed on him, cold and hard. Beside her sat a man in his 40s with a watchful gaze, Kenji Sterling, though Econ didn't know him. And by the window stood a woman in a sharp suit with a badge in her hand. Econ turned so pale his skin looked gray. He backed toward the door, but it swung open behind him, and 2 uniformed officers from the DA's task force blocked the exit. "What? What is this?" Econ rasped, staring at Kamari. You're alive? How?" "Econ Thorne." The woman by the window stepped forward, showing her badge. "Detective Imara Vance, District Attorney's Office. You are under arrest for attempted murder. You have the right to an attorney. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Econ swayed. His legs were giving out. He grabbed the back of a chair. "No. This is a mistake. I don't understand." Kamari stood up. She held a folder, walked over to Econ, and handed him the papers. "This is a petition for divorce." Her voice was steady, ice cold. "Grounds. Attempt on my life. systematic fraud, and infidelity. The divorce will be granted as a summary judgment. Under the prenuptial agreement, you get nothing. Absolutely nothing. Akon looked at the documents, unable to read a single line. The letters blurred before his eyes. "Kamari, listen." He stepped toward her, reaching out, but the officers were instantly there, pinning his arms. "This is a misunderstanding. I didn't want to. I was desperate. I have debts. I didn't know what I was doing." "You knew exactly what you were doing," Kamari snapped. Her eyes flashed. "You researched toxins for a week. You bought the compound through a contact. You spiked my wine at the restaurant. We have the security footage. You drove me to the woods and left me to die, telling me I had 30 minutes left. It was all planned, calculated, cold-blooded. And then you were texting your mistress that you'd be starting a new life soon." Akon opened his mouth but found no words. The evidence. They had the evidence. Everything had collapsed. His entire plan was dust. "We have the medical report of the thiophosphate poisoning," Imara Vance continued, stepping closer. "Blood samples taken the night of the attempt. The video from the restaurant. Your messages to Kalani promising her everything after you handled your wife. Your financial records showing $500,000 in debt and the will naming you as the heir. Motive, method, evidence. It's all there." Akon lowered his head. His shoulders slumped. He knew he had lost. Completely, finally, irrevocably. "Kamari, I'm sorry," he whispered. "I don't know what came over me. The debt, the desperation. I love you, really." "No." Kamari shook her head. "You never loved me. You confessed that in the woods. You said I was just a convenient option, a wealthy woman who fell for your lies. Remember, Akon?" Akon cringed. Yes, he had said that. He'd said it when he was sure she would die and no one would ever know. "You underestimated me, Akon." Kamari stepped closer, looking him right in the eye. "You thought I was weak, that I was easy to get rid of. But I survived. I was saved. And now you're going to pay for everything you did." The officers clicked the handcuffs shut. The cold metal bit into his wrists. They began to lead him out. Where are you taking me?" he asked in a hoarse voice. "To central booking," Imara replied. "Until trial. And after you're convicted, and I'm certain you will be, to a state penitentiary for 15 to 25 years. They led Akon out of the room. He looked back one last time, trying to catch Kamari's eye, but she was standing with her back to him, staring out the window. For her, Akon Thorne no longer existed. He had died that night in the woods when he showed his true face. When the door closed behind him, Kamari let out a long breath. Her legs buckled, and she sank into a chair. Kenji was there instantly, his hand on her shoulder. "It's over," he said softly. "You did it. You're incredibly strong." Kamari nodded. Tears fell down her cheeks, but they were tears of relief, of liberation. The weight she had been carrying for weeks finally fell away. "Yes," she whispered. "It's over. I'm free." The investigation and the subsequent trial lasted 3 months. Akon Thorne tried to deny the charges, hiring a lawyer who attempted to argue it was an accident or a misunderstanding, but the evidence was irrefutable. Aurelia Sterling's medical testimony regarding the poisoning, the restaurant footage, the messages to Kalani, the financial records proving his desperate state and motive, it all formed the basis for a conviction. Kamari attended every hearing. She sat in the courtroom, calm and composed, listening to the testimony of witnesses, experts, and Akon himself. Sometimes she caught her ex-husband's eye, seeing anger, then fear, then pathetic regret. But she didn't care. That man no longer had any power over her. Kalani also testified. The girl walked into court pale, her eyes red from crying. She spoke about her relationship with Akon, his promises, and how he had manipulated her feelings. After her testimony, she approached Kamari in the hallway. "I am so sorry," Kalani whispered, looking down. "I didn't know. I swear I would never have agreed to any of it if I had known." Kamari looked at the young woman who had been nothing but a pawn in someone else's game and sighed. "I don't blame you. You were his victim, too. He used you just like he used me, just for different reasons. I'm never getting involved with a married man again." Kalani wiped her eyes. "Never. I've learned my lesson. Take care of yourself." Kamari touched her hand. "Be careful who you trust." Kalani nodded and walked away. Her mother, Sandra, gave Kamari a grateful look. She hadn't expected such humanity from the woman who had almost died because of her daughter's affair. In late September, the judge handed down the sentence. Econ Thorne was found guilty of attempted murder and sentenced to 18 years in state prison. Econ turned pale as the sentence was read, trying to say something, but the bailiffs were already leading him from the courtroom. Kamari stepped out into the crisp air. Leaves were falling from the trees, carpeting the sidewalk in gold. She closed her eyes and felt the last of the weight lift. It was finished. Econ was facing his punishment, and she had her whole life ahead of her. Kenji was waiting for her by the car. He had been at every hearing, supporting her, standing by her through the hardest moments. In those 3 months, a special bond had formed between them, built on trust and mutual respect. "Congratulations," he said as she approached. "Justice was served." "Thanks to you," Kamari smiled. "If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't even be alive." Then fate brought us together at the right time. Kenji opened the door for her. "Where to?" "Home, to my apartment. I haven't been there in a long time." The divorce had been finalized before the trial. Under the prenuptial agreement, Econ received nothing. All assets remained with Kamari. She also annulled the old will. Her business hadn't suffered during the proceedings. Her deputies had handled the day-to-day operations while she worked remotely. But now that it was over, she planned to return to full-time leadership. A month after the sentencing, Kamari met Kenji at a restaurant. Not the one where Econ had poisoned her. She would never go there again, but a new place, bright and airy, with a stunning view of the skyline. "I wanted to talk to you about something," Kenji said, as they ordered dinner. "A business proposal." "I'm listening." Kamari took a sip of water. "Our businesses complement each other. You handle high-end assisted living. I handle private clinics and medical centers. What if we joined forces? Create a joint network of healthcare facilities with a full cycle of care, from outpatient treatment to long-term residential support." Kamari thought about it. The idea was intriguing. Indeed, such a partnership would benefit them both. "It could work," she said slowly, "but we'd need to carefully work out the details, the financial model, the management structure, the division of authority. Of course, I've already had my lawyers draft a preliminary plan. We can meet next week to discuss the specifics. Deal?" They continued their dinner, talking about business, plans, and life. Kamari realized she felt easy and comfortable with Kenji. He didn't push, he didn't try to control. He treated her as an equal. It was so different from her relationship with Econ, where she always felt obligated, guilty, or not good enough. Over the next few weeks, they began working on the joint venture. They met several times a week, discussing details, debating, and finding compromises. Aurelia Sterling also got involved, consulting on medical aspects. Dr. Pierce offered his clinic as a pilot project for the new model. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. In November, just as Kamari and Kenji were signing the merger agreement, an unexpected problem arose. One of Kamari's major investors, hearing about the merger, demanded an early return of his funds. The amount was massive, $20 million. "He says he doesn't trust the new management structure." Kamari paced nervously in Kenji's office. "He wants the money within a month or he's threatening to sue." "Who is the investor?" Kenji frowned. "Arthur Kamau. He invested in my business 3 years ago. Formally, he has the right to demand a buyout upon a change in ownership structure. Kamau..." Kenji thought for a moment. "I've heard of him. Tough businessman, but fair. Maybe I can talk to him." The meeting with Kamau took place 2 days later. Kenji proposed that he become a co-investor in the newly merged company under even more favorable terms. Kamau listened, reviewed the business plan, and asked several sharp questions. "Fine," he finally said. "I'm in, but on one condition: I want a seat on the board and voting rights on strategic decisions." Kamari and Kenji looked at each other. It was a reasonable demand. "Deal." Kenji extended his hand. The crisis was averted. Furthermore, Kamau proved to be a valuable partner, bringing his experience and connections to the table. By the end of the year, they opened their first joint medical center and assisted living facility. The project was a massive success. Gradually, the business relationship grew into something more. Kenji invited Kamari to concerts, to the theater, on long walks through the city. She accepted, and each time she realized she loved spending time with him. He was attentive, tactful, and knew how to really listen. Beside him, she felt protected, but never confined. One evening, as they walked along the riverfront, Kenji stopped and turned to her. "I don't want to rush things. I know you've been through a horrific betrayal and you need time. But I have to say, I love being with you. Not just as a business partner. I like you as a man likes a woman." Kamari looked at him. Her heart beat faster. She felt the pull too, but she had been afraid to admit it even to herself. The wounds were still so fresh. "I love being with you too," she said softly. "But I'm scared. Scared of making another mistake, of trusting the wrong person again." "I understand. I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. No pressure, no demands. Just know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." They continued walking, and Kamari felt something warm blossom inside her. Maybe she really did deserve a second chance at happiness. A year passed. The joint business was thriving. They had opened 3 new centers and were planning to expand into other states. Their relationship had also grown, slowly but surely. Kamari had learned to trust again, and Kenji showed patience and care without asking for anything in return. In the spring, another problem arose. A rival firm tried to poach Kamari's key employees, offering double salaries. 3 of her facility directors had already resigned. "It's Marcus Thorne," Kamari said at an emergency meeting. "Remember him? He offered a buyout 2 years ago and I refused. Now he's retaliating. We can't afford to lose these people." Kenji reviewed the documents. "They know the entire system from the inside. I'll talk to each of them personally," Kamari decided. "I'll offer them stock options and a share of the profits. Let them feel like partners, not just employees." The strategy worked. 2 of the 3 directors stayed, receiving stock and joining the expanded management board. The 3rd left, but was quickly replaced by a bright young specialist who brought fresh ideas to the facility. Marcus Thorne lost that battle, and Kamari and Kenji tightened their internal security protocols. The following March, Kenji proposed. It happened in his apartment, where Kamari had once lived while recovering. He had cooked dinner, lit candles, and after dessert, he dropped to one knee. "Kamari, I know you've had a failed marriage. I know you're afraid of history repeating itself, but I promise you, I will respect you, support you, and love you. Not for money, not for gain, but simply because you are an incredible woman who changed my life. Will you marry me?" Kamari looked at him through tears. This man had saved her twice, first from death, then from despair. He had shown her that she could be strong and vulnerable at the same time, that she could trust without losing herself. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." The wedding was held in the summer, small, with only close friends and family. Aurelia Sterling cried with joy as she hugged her new daughter-in-law. Detective Imara Vance attended too, congratulating the couple and wishing them happiness. Even Kalani sent a card with an apology and well wishes. After the wedding, they flew to Italy for a week. For the first time in years, Kamari felt truly free and happy. A year later, Kamari and Kenji had a daughter. The birth was difficult. Doctors had been concerned about Kamari's health due to the lingering effects of the poisoning, but in the end, everything went well. They named her Imani, for faith. Faith in people, faith in justice, faith that after the darkest times, light always returns. The little girl, with dark hair and her father's soulful eyes, became the symbol of their new life, built on love